Master, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you both for your testimony today. General, we're going to continue on Lake Okeechobee, continue on a debate, the conversation that we were having this summer, and hopefully get to a place that we can work on something in the next WRDA bill that can help both Lake Okeechobee and help the soldiers and civilians that are working for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I asked you a very pointed question last summer, General. Are the soldiers and civilians working at Port Mayaca directly on top of the toxic water pictured behind me, which is off-gassing and is toxic to a level sometimes 100 times greater than the threshold of toxic? Are those civilians and soldiers working directly on top of that, breathing it in 8-10 hours a day in insufferable conditions? Are they being poisoned? You answered to me emphatically no. Would you like to recant that statement or change it at all at this time?
Hey, Congressman Mass, I think what I told you is we're going to follow. I'm not a doctor, right? And I've shared that with you. I'm a civil engineer. So we're going to follow the best advice that we get from the community, the Florida Department of Health. I agree with you. I think it's deplorable that my civilians, my great civilians, my military folks have to work in these state conditions. But we're going to work harder when those conditions materialize at that Port Mayaca to clean it up much like quicker with South Florida, just much like you did in a marina in your district.
In Pahokee, that's right. General, let's pause you there. This is important. You're not a doctor. You're the chief, the sworn-in chief of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, a lieutenant general, 3-star general, whose health and safety of all of those underneath you, that's your responsibility. The question isn't, are you doing what the Florida Department of Health says? The question is, on the table, are those soldiers and civilians being poisoned by that situation?
Sir, I would have to defer to a doctor to answer that question.
Well, you guys actually sent me a letter after last summer, and you said the EPA indicates the highest risk for microcystin exposure is through ingestion. That's kind of like a no shit statement, right? Obviously, if you drink something, it's worse than breathing it in or touching it, right? Could say the same thing about alpha radiation or asbestos or something else. So yeah, we can figure that one out. It also said a direct lie. The EPA indicates the health risks associated with inhalation are very low. That's not what the EPA said. In fact, I got a letter from the EPA saying that what you sent to me wasn't true. They said you got to take that in the right context. And here's their quote. The statement above that the health risks associated with inhalation are low, yeah, that's only in the proper context comparing it to ingestion. They're not saying that the health risks are low. They're just saying it's lower than ingesting it. Like, again, like we could say about asbestos or radiation or anything else. I want to ask you a question. You're going off the Florida Department of Health. That's what you said last summer. That's what you just said just now. Why is the Department of Health telling you to have your people wear a mask and gloves if they're not being poisoned?
Sir, let me back up. First of all, I am not familiar with the letter that you received from the Environmental Protection Agency, and if your staff would like to share that with me, I would like to go back on the record and correct any statements.
You'll get it. Done.
Right. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm sorry, sir. Can you repeat your other question? Why are my folks wearing masks?
No, listen, if the Florida Department of Health said, listen, you're following their guidance, wear a mask and gloves. You said you're following Florida Department of Health. Why do you have to wear a mask and gloves if you're not being poisoned?
Sure, I'm sure it has to do with precautions given the conditions that we're forced to work in your state.
Precautions for what? Don't play stupid. That's the definition of bureaucratic BS that goes on in this place. Again, you're a 3-star general, chief of the Corps, and your task is to protect your men and women, among many other things. Be protected from what? From being poisoned. Say it.
No, I'm not going to say that. Sir, I will look at the letters you've been given. I will confer with the doctors and the experts that you have in the state to protect our workforce.
Protect them from what? Why do they need to wear a mask and gloves if they're not being poisoned?
Sir, you've smelled the algae and you've read the reports. You've just quoted them yourself from the harmful effects that has to the people that have to live and work in these conditions.
No, I didn't tell you the effects of it at all. Why don't you tell us the effects of it?
So
You're the chief of the Corps. These are your people. Tell us the effects that it's having
Sure,
on your soldiers and civilians.
yes, sir. So we work in these conditions, and as I mentioned to you last Friday, we're going to work harder to clean them up when these.
And
when
what
this
is it
foreign
doing
party
to your
gets,
people? What is it doing to your people? Answer that question.
Sir, I'm not aware of. it doing
Soldiers
anything to my
in
people.
uniform, like you, like me previously.
Mr. Mass, your time is up, Mr. Mass.